The air inside the Los Angeles theater buzzed with excitement as thousands of audience members filled the seats, unaware that one of the most emotional moments in AGT history was about to unfold. Backstage, a father named Mateo Santos stood with his 14-year-old son, Eli, their hands slightly trembling not from fear, but from the weight of everything they had left behind in Cebu to be here. The boy clutched a worn-out acoustic guitar, one that had survived typhoons, power outages, long nights in candlelit rooms, and the quiet hopes whispered between father and son during the toughest years of their life. Mateo adjusted his son's collar, smoothing it carefully like he had done every school morning since Eli was little. But today wasn't school. Today was the moment that could rewrite their destiny. The producers called their name. The camera light blinked red. And suddenly the world around them felt impossibly loud. Eli took a deep breath, remembering the first time he had ever heard his father sing. The memory always played like a movie, a rainy night, the roof leaking, a candle flickering between them, and his father humming a lullaby while patching the cracks in their walls. That voice, warm, deep, and tired, became the soundtrack of his childhood. It was the reason he loved music. It was the reason they were here. As they stepped onto the massive AGT stage, the crowd gave polite applause, not yet aware of the emotional storm that was about to unfold. Simon Cowell leaned forward, curious about the unusual pairing. "Tell us who you are," he asked. Mateo introduced himself with a gentle smile, gripping the microphone with both hands. "I'm Mateo, and this is my son, Eli. We're from Cebu, in the Philippines." The audience lit up, some cheering, some waving small flags, surprised and excited to see an international duo. When asked what brought them to the show, Mateo hesitated. Eli stepped up and spoke with the honesty only a child can bring. "My dad stopped singing for many years," he said. "Life got really hard. But I always knew his voice wasn't just for surviving, it was meant for something bigger. So I asked him if we could sing together. And now we're here." The judges exchanged glances. There was something raw, something unguarded, in the boy's words. Simon softened. "Well," he said, "let's hear what the two of you can do." The music began, a gentle acoustic arrangement of "You Raise Me Up," but it wasn't the typical version. Eli started alone, his voice fragile yet pure, carrying an emotional depth far beyond his age. The audience was stunned. His tone floated through the air like a soft prayer, controlled yet trembling with sincerity. Halfway through the first verse, Mateo joined in, his voice rich and haunting, blending with his son's in a harmony that sounded like two souls carrying each other through years of hardship. Faces in the audience shifted. Gasps echoed as the harmonies built, each note revealing a story the world had never heard. Simon's eyes began to water, not from the song itself, but from something deeper. There was a truth in their voices that could not be faked. A father who sacrificed everything. A son determined to honor him. Two voices molded by storms, loss, resilience, and love. As the song reached its climax, a twist shivered through the room. Eli stepped forward, singing a solo verse with a power no one had expected. His young voice cracked slightly, not from weakness but from overwhelming emotion. And then something even more unexpected happened. Mateo's voice quivered behind him, as though he were fighting back years of unspoken pain. The father-son harmony broke, not musically, but emotionally, because the song had taken them back to the night everything changed. Behind their performance was a hidden story that no one in the theater knew. Years ago, a devastating storm had swept through Cebu, destroying their home and nearly taking their family apart. They lost almost everything: possessions, income, security, even their sense of belonging. For months, Mateo worked 3 jobs while sleeping only a few hours each night. He set aside his guitar, believing music was a dream he no longer deserved. But Eli remembered the voice that had always comforted him, and he vowed to bring it back. One night, after another long shift, Mateo came home and found Eli practicing alone under a broken roof, singing with all his heart. Something inside Mateo cracked open. He sat beside his son, and for the first time in years, he sang again. It was the beginning of their return, not just to music, but to each other. Back on stage, as their voices merged again for the final chorus, the entire crowd rose to their feet. People cried openly, clutching tissues, holding hands with strangers. The camera zoomed in on Simon, who wiped a tear from his eye and whispered something unheard into his microphone. The song ended. Silence followed. Then the theater exploded. Cheers, screams, a standing ovation that felt like an earthquake. Heidi covered her mouth in shock, Howie stood clapping wildly, and Sophia had tears streaming down her cheeks. But all eyes were on Simon. He leaned in, his voice quieter than usual. "I don't cry often," he said, "but what you two just did, that was pure magic. You didn't just sing. You told your story without saying a word. And I felt every single moment. The father and son stared back at him, overwhelmed, trembling. Then Simon stood up. The audience knew what was coming. Eli covered his face with his hands. Mateo shook his head in disbelief. Simon reached out his hand and slammed the golden buzzer. A shower of gold rained down on them, falling like blessings from the heavens. The theater erupted with ecstatic screams as confetti swirled around father and son. Mateo dropped to his knees, tears pouring down his cheeks, while Eli wrapped his arms around him with a cry that broke 1,000 hearts at once. The judges ran onto the stage. Simon hugged them both tightly, something he rarely does. "You two," he said in a trembling voice, "just created one of the greatest moments this stage has ever seen." Backstage, the duo collapsed into each other's arms. Mateo kept repeating, "This is for you, son." Eli shook his head, saying, "No, Dad, this is for us." Producers, crew members, and even security guards wiped their eyes as the father and son walked down the hallway, still glowing from confetti dust and disbelief. News outlets around the world would soon pick up the footage. The clip would go viral before the night even ended, touching millions who saw their own fathers, sons, struggles, and dreams within the performance. Their story was no longer about hardship, it was about hope, resilience, and the unbreakable love that carried them from a small Cebu neighborhood all the way to the world's biggest stage. And it was only the beginning.